In the 1860s, rivers in Pennsylvania ran slick with a foul, iridescent waste that refineries couldn't dispose of fast enough. That waste was gasoline, the same molecule that would one day power every car, plane, and generator on the face of the earth. Nobody wanted it. It caught fire too easily, it stank, and there was nothing useful to burn it in, so they dumped it. The real prize from crude oil back then was kerosene, the fuel that lit every lamp in America. Gasoline was just kerosene's annoying little brother. For 30 years this went on. Millions of gallons of what would become civilization's most essential fuel, treated as a nuisance to be buried or burned off. Then everything changed. Not because scientists suddenly understood gasoline better, because an entirely new machine appeared that happened to be hungry for exactly what refineries were throwing away. But here is the thing nobody tells you. Simply having a fuel and a machine to burn, it was nowhere near enough. Gasoline had a fatal flaw buried deep inside its chemistry. That flaw did not appear in a laboratory. It appeared on the road, inside real engines, at the worst possible moment. But to understand it, you have to go back to before gasoline existed at all. Before any of this, the world ran on whale oil. Whole fleets crossed entire oceans just to harvest the fat from sperm whales and pour it into lamps. Then in 1859, Edwin Drake drove a pipe into the Pennsylvania ground and struck oil. Suddenly there was a cheaper, better fuel. Kerosene, refined from crude oil, replaced whale oil almost overnight. Refiners cooked crude oil and collected kerosene as the prize. But the process also produced a lighter, far more volatile liquid that nobody wanted. It evaporated, it caught fire, and it served no purpose. So refiners got rid of it. Some burned it off in open flames. Some dumped thousands of barrels directly into rivers and creeks, turning the water slick with the stuff. This waste product had a name, naphtha, or essence, or simply gasoline. Then the internal combustion engine arrived, and in one stroke it flipped the entire value hierarchy upside down. The waste became the prize. Kerosene became the afterthought. But the engine that crowned Gasoline King came with a brutal flaw baked right into its design. Drivers called it knock, a sharp metallic pinging rattling up through the steering wheel every time they pushed the engine hard. It was not just annoying. Knock punched craters into pistons, cracked cylinder walls, and strangled the power an engine could ever hope to produce. The culprit was the fuel itself. Gasoline is a mixture of hydrocarbon molecules, and some of them are far too eager to ignite. Take N-heptane. 7 carbons lined up in a perfectly straight chain. Under compression, it ignites spontaneously before the spark plug even fires. Branching changes everything. Isooctane has the same atoms as N-heptane, but wrapped into a compact, stubby, branched shape that refuses to ignite on command. Those branches interrupt the chain reaction that causes knock. More branches means more stability, and more stability means more power without destruction. So the question became urgent. How do you get a fuel full of them? The answer was hiding in a molecule nobody wanted. One that was born by accident in a university lab and ignored for 30 years. In 1898, a chemist at Bristol was experimenting with branched paraffins and nitric acid. The result was a new compound called isooctane. He noted it, published it, and moved on. Nobody cared. For 3 decades, isooctane sat in the literature, a footnote. Engines roared ahead, knock got worse, and the world had no language yet to measure it. Then, in the late 1920s, researchers needed a way to give knock a number. They needed 2 extreme reference points. One fuel that knocked as badly as possible. One that never knocked at all. They chose N-heptane as 0, a straight chain molecule, maximum knock, And for the other end, the 100, they pulled up that forgotten 1,898 compound, isooctane, 2,2,4-trimethylpentane. A molecule born by accident in a routine experiment became the universal yardstick for every gallon of fuel ever sold. Now the question was urgent. How do you build an engine that needs more than 100? The answer came from inside General Motors. A young engineer named Thomas Midgley Jr. was handed the knock problem like a puzzle, with orders to solve it cheap and solve it fast. Midgley tested hundreds of chemical compounds, one by one, including arsenic and selenium, searching for anything that could silence an engine's knock without costing a fortune. On the 9th of December 1921, Midgley added a few drops of tetraethyl lead to a test engine's fuel. The knock vanished. The engine ran smooth and silent as glass. By 1923, tetraethyl lead was on sale at filling stations across America. General Motors branded it simply as ethyl. The word lead never appeared anywhere on the pump. Inside the factories where TEL was made, workers began hallucinating. They screamed, seized, and died. Newspapers called the plant on the Bayway refinery Looney Gas House. Midgley himself was secretly treated for lead poisoning. Yet he stood before a room of journalists, poured tetraethyl lead over his bare hands, and smiled while the cameras clicked. In 1926, a government-commissioned public health report concluded that leaded gasoline posed no immediate danger to the public. Corporate pressure had shaped every finding. With the all-clear given, leaded fuel spread across the globe. For the next 50 years, every car, every truck, every breath of city air carried invisible lead. The fix had poisoned the world. But while leaded fuel was poisoning city air, a parallel story was unfolding in the skies. And the molecule at its center was not lead. It was shape. In 1940, RAF Spitfires were running on 7-octane fuel. Luftwaffe Bf 109s were running on 91. The Germans were faster. They climbed higher. British pilots knew it. Jimmy Doolittle had seen this coming for years. Through the late 1930s, he had been at Shell, not flying, not fighting. He was lobbying, pushing for 100-octane fuel production at industrial scale. Nobody wanted to pay for it. 100-octane cost more, required new refinery equipment, and the military saw no urgent need. Doolittle kept pushing anyway. Then the Battle of Britain began, and suddenly every RAF squadron got access to 100-octane fuel. The effect was immediate and measurable, 25 to 34 miles per hour, faster at low altitude. The Rolls-Royce Merlin engine had been designed around 100-octane being available. Without the branched shape of isooctane resisting premature ignition, the Merlin could not deliver its rated power. The molecule was built into the machine. Geoffrey Lloyd, Britain's Secretary of Petroleum, said it plainly after the war. They might not have won the Battle of Britain without 100-octane fuel. A molecule had turned the tide. But a molecule that wins wars does not retire quietly. Back home, in every city, in every suburb, leaded gasoline kept burning, and the lead kept falling. In the late 1970s, a pediatrician named Herbert Needleman did something no one had fully done before. He measured the lead in children's teeth, and then he measured their minds. His findings were devastating. Children with higher lead in their teeth scored measurably lower on IQ tests and had significantly more learning disabilities. There was no safe level. The EPA had already begun moving in 1973, mandating a slow phase-down of lead in gasoline. But the industry fought every step. The rollback took decades. Then the catalytic converter settled the argument. To function, it required unleaded fuel. Lead poisoned the catalyst instantly. so the cars themselves demanded the poison stop. In 1996, the United States banned leaded gasoline entirely. Within years, blood lead levels in American children fell by 70%. 70%. But the rest of the world was slower. Africa, the Middle East, parts of Asia kept burning leaded fuel for years more. A UN study found it was still causing over 1 million premature deaths every single year. In 2021, Algeria phased out its last stocks of leaded gasoline. Nearly 100 years after Thomas Midgley made his discovery in a Dayton laboratory, the world finally stopped. Think about what that is. A molecule accidentally discovered in 1921 crowned the gold standard of engine performance, poisoning hundreds of millions of people for a century. And we knew from the very beginning. The rivers are cleaner now. The children's blood is cleaner now. And somewhere, at the center of all of it, still glowing, is that branched little structure of carbon and hydrogen that started everything. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. And if you want to know what other molecules quietly shape the world you live in, the next one is already waiting.